have the good fortune this evening to have with us an illustrious minister, I should say a youthful minister of youth and culture. The same minister who we witnessed last year in Jamaica was brought about an event, a celebration that is still being talked about here in the Northeast. Those who went boasted, and those who didn't go decided that they missed something special. I am among those counted. Now, I'm not going to speak long to you this evening. I thank you very much for coming, because the minister is here and she came in for UN services. She was doing duties at the UN, but she decided that she needed to touch base. I told her principals and her permanent secretary that Friday is a bad day, but she wanted to still touch base if it's even half a dozen of us, because it's important. Sometimes it's not quality, it's not quantity, it's quality. And whatever she tells us here, I'm sure we will replicate it outside, that the word gets around. I heard her earlier this afternoon presented to a group of young youth workers and young people themselves. And I was impressed with the number of things that she's been achieving in this short space of time. I know she wants to hurry back to Jamaica for several reasons, but one important thing that I may mention here, if you have not heard already, the former Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Seymour Mullins, passed on March 9th. And she, October 9th. I made a mistake before, sorry. October 9th. And she happens to be representing that very same constituency that we first held. So she's a daughter of that constituency. I said something earlier on at the consulate, but then I was on immune ground, and so I won't repeat it here. But she is firmly entrenched in that constituency. She is looking after the future of our country, the youth. And I think that's a very important role to have, because that's where our future lies. Those are the people, if I manage to keep well and live long enough, they will pay my pension. She secured that for me. So without further ado, she has with her right now Mrs. Joan Young Davis, who is a very senior officer in her ministry, one who I've known for a long time, reliable, someone you can call on to get any assistance you need in that ministry. There are two other officers that are coming here. They are late, not because of their own fault, but because of traffic tie-up, and we were trying to bring them here. So they should join us a little later. But without further ado, could you help me to welcome the Minister of Youth and Culture, the Honourable Lisa Hanna.
Thank you so much, C.G. Lamont, for certainly taking care of us while we're here, and for all the things that you've been doing with your offices, and for being so gracious to put this together. I want to say a very special thank you in his absence to the Bishop, Mr. Bishop Riley, for accommodating us in this beautiful space. And please convey my good wishes and let him know that I need my picture up on the wall with him, because I seem to be the only one that is not up there, and I'm not happy about it. And thank you to his daughter, Mrs. Riley Posey. Your voice is beautiful, and I'm glad that we waited to be blessed by your voice. And certainly Pastor Lawrence, big up with your prayers, sir. And Chris Castriota, dear friend, and someone that I have a lot of time for, and I know that he's been doing a tremendous job. And to all of you for coming out. It's a Friday evening, and a Friday evening anywhere in the world is still a Friday evening. So I know the sacrifices that you've made, and I don't take them lightly, and I just want to thank you. I know we have some people who are journeying all the way from New Jersey for 3 hours, and I thank you for coming. And for the rest of you who have beat the rush hour traffic to get here, thank you so much, because I know at the end of the week, everybody wants to kind of go home and just relax a little bit. So this is not going to be a long event. I felt it was important because those of you who are away, whether or not you have grown up in the United States as a Jamaican as an American of Jamaican parents, or whether you've been here, it's always good to hear firsthand what is going on in your country. And those of us who were elected to take care of your country feel we have an obligation and a duty to meet with you when we're in your neck of the woods. Because for us, it gives us a sense of comfort knowing that there are those people everywhere in the world that's carrying our flags high. And I hope that being able to see, touch, and feel those of us who are in government gives you a sense of hope about what is happening for the future of your country. My ministry is very simple. I represent more than half of the country's population, which is our young people and our children. I represent those people who are under 30, and I represent as well that immense opportunity, which is our culture, that the rest of the world knows about, that the rest of the world heralds as some of the best things that the world has ever seen, from Marcus Garvey to Bob Marley, to our dance, to our music, to our food, to the way we are naturally as superstars anywhere we go in the world. Having a Jamaican birth certificate sets us above and beyond the rest of the world. And I always say if you have a tattoo, it should say made in Jamaica or proud to be Jamaican. Because we are a very, very phenomenal set of people. So why am I here in New York? I was here in June and I'm back here now. I'm here this time because we are reporting on the work that we've done on children and the policies and programs that we've implemented for children, certainly over the past 7 months. And we've taken a very active approach in doing it. Last year, we took a step in the right direction. Since we've signed the International Protocol on Children, the Rights on the Convention of the Child, we have been breaching the protocol since we've signed it. There are some good things that have been established, the Child Development Agency, the Office of the Children's Registry, the Children's Advocate, and we've implemented a number of systems. My ministry operates and runs through the Child Development Agency all children's homes and all places of safety. What was happening, however, is that, as you know, there are several agencies and ministries that have responsibility for children in Jamaica. There's a Ministry of National Security who deals with children when they come in conflict with the law and they end up in juvenile detention centers. There is the Ministry of Justice who deals with the judges and who deals with other aspects, who deal with legislation for children who come in contact with the law or who deal with their rights. There's a Ministry of Education, there's a Ministry of Health, there's a police, there's a children's advocate, and there's a host of persons. What we found is that as a country, even though our respective agencies and ministries were achieving their objectives, we were doing it in silos. And so one of the first things I did was to bring everybody around one table. Since we were able to do that and not learning what each other was doing in the media, we were able to implement and institute several progressive initiatives. One, we were able to fully remove children from adult correctional institutions. So children are no longer with adults in penal institutions. Two, we're implementing our restorative justice system, whereby it is an internationally held practice that it is better to keep children out of incarceration than in incarceration. And so to put parish committees in place and other kinds of systems for mediation rather than to have a judge remand them to an institution. In addition to that, the legislation was passed so that abused or rape victims could give video conferencing or video evidence so that you wouldn't have to subject a child in a court in front of their perpetrator, etc. It's a very good The other thing we've been able to do is, many of you are not aware, but more than a third of our children that were incarcerated both in the girls and boys' juvenile systems in Jamaica were there for what is called uncontrollable behavior. And uncontrollable behavior is where a child under 18 exhibits behavior that a parent believes that they can't deal with, and sometimes that parent takes a child out to the police station and says, look, can't manage this child, you take them. And that sometimes is smoking ganja, smoking cigarettes, walking up and down, having sex on the street, a number of things that in many instances a child is more of a victim rather than a perpetrator. So what we've done is Cabinet has now approved, we worked with UNICEF, we worked with other people, and we drafted submissions to Cabinet asking for the removal of the label uncontrollable behavior. That has been granted. It's because what we're now doing, instead of incarcerating those children need counseling, they need therapy. So we've now got that approved, and we also have approved $60 million from the Jamaica Social Investment Fund to build the therapeutic facility. We also have, and we've put together, because we realized that we couldn't do it on our own, a team of I now have a council of psychiatrists and psychologists assisting us with developing the kinds of systems that need to be implemented. So that same team, along with a children's task force that was implemented last year, have worked together, and that children's task force, headed by Reverend Marjorie Lewis under the ministry, brings together all the NGOs. And we were able to put together our first counseling workshop in one of our juvenile institutions, not only with the children, but with the social workers, with the parents, because we realized that the workers in these facilities needed training and upgrades. Many of them were not able to deal with the children in a particular way. So those are just a few of them. I have Mrs. Joan Young-Davis here, who is a part of the ministry's team on special projects and legacy projects. And when we went in, when that unfortunate incident happened, and what persons need to also understand is that as a Minister of Youth and Culture, I have no jurisdiction over going into a juvenile facility under the Ministry of National Security. I have to ask permission to go. So when that unfortunate incident with that young woman who unfortunately took her life, we went in, we asked permission to go in, to talk to the young women. And when we went in, and spoke to those young women, we found a number of things. We found that they were extremely bright. Many of them were put there by their mothers and by their grandmothers and by their guardians, and they'd just been there. Many of them wanted to get back before a judge to tell their story, and many of them wanted other outlets. So when we sat down and we spoke to them, and they told us of their experiences, they asked us for outlets, and they wanted to do drama and dance and art. And we went back, we called in the National Gallery, we called in the Jamaica JCDC, which is also under my ministry, and the National Gallery. I called in all of my cultural institutions, and I said, look, let us put together programs to offer cultural extracurricular activities to these young women and young men. And today we have a program called Art for Life, which has started in our girls' prison. And they're now working on a production, so you have script writers, you have people who are doing dancing, you have people who are writing, you have people who are acting, and Mrs. Young-Davis, who's here, we got that program fully funded by Chase, so it will run in the prisons, so these young women have an outlet while they're there to express themselves. And so, the last thing I'll mention, because there's so many things that I could sit here and talk about, and these are some of the things that we presented at the United Nations, and they were blown away, essentially, because when they came in May, even though we reported to them last year, they couldn't believe that we had done so much more things in the last 7 months. And a lot of it happened because we took a decision to work together as a government. The last thing I will mention is this. When you take a child, or you see a child who has been neglected or missing, or even when a child comes in conflict with the law, where's the first place that you take that child? Say it again?
Police station.
There is a misconception around that somehow I am building police stations for children. I'm not. Under the Beijing rules and under our own national law, children should not be brought into contact with adults at police stations. And children should not be in police stations for more than 48 hours. So what happens now, if a child is brought in for care and protection, the CDA immediately removes that child. If the child is brought in and has committed an offense, and that child has to be put before a judge within 48 hours. So the Children's Advocate and the Ministry of Justice is now working together to provide legal aid for children. But what was happening is that there would be these makeshift situations for children who ended up at police stations, and the police would try their best to make sure that they don't get involved with adults. We've now designated, and Cabinet has approved, that there should be one police station per parish that deals with children. That if a child is lost, if something happens, the staff is trained to deal with the children, etc. But we've gone a step further. We went to Jeep and we said, look, we don't have the money as the Ministry of Youth and Culture. And Jeep said they would work with us under the Ministry of Transport and Works to help retrofit the first 5 of 14 police stations with child units. So what will happen is that somewhere on the police compound, there will be a unit designed solely for children. It will have 2 bedrooms, it will have a homework station, it will have a place where parents can visit with their children if the child is there for more than, if the child comes there, or a counselor, a lawyer can visit, and it will have another part for maybe a child who is exhibiting a type of behavior that would not be compatible with another child that is there for neglect or went missing, etc. So $75 million has been approved, and we're starting with our first 3 police stations. All of those permissions have been granted, and we have the money in place to roll out that program. And what I would say finally on children in terms of the report that we've made is this year the Ananda Alert system was brought to my ministry. 5 years ago, when Ananda Dean, a young 11-year-old, was unfortunately taken from us, a system was put in place to deal with missing children. It was working, but it could have been working more effectively because it wasn't funded as much as it should have been, etc. Since we brought it to the Ministry of Youth and Culture, we got an increased budget from the Ministry of Finance to hire additional staff. And we've now gone into a multi-sectoral approach system with Ananda Alert. Not only using GPS mapping technology to identify where children are kidnapped, etc., but we're now utilizing all electronic boards across the country, working with schools. And so around 1,500 plus children went missing from January to July of this year. Through that system, we've managed to recover 1,247 of them. Unfortunately, 9 lost their lives, and we still can't account for the other ones. But we are assured by the police about some other systems that go into place why sometimes you can't find children. Turning to youth, we are now focusing on rolling out our programs and policies, coming out of the surveys that we spent a lot of time doing last year with our consultations. So you will see we launched our activities on October 14, and you will see a number of those activities rolling out from November through to the next 5 months of next year. We have a graduate work program through the National Youth Service, which will be placing graduate students, those with university degrees, in private sector jobs. We're placing our first 100 university graduates under the National Youth Service by November 18. We have another 200 to place by the end of January next year. We also have entrepreneurship programs coming. We're rolling out 40 community projects for young community groups, youth groups across the island. We're having situations where young people will have access to capital that they can pitch their ideas to through a cadre of business people we're putting together to put up some equity. So there are a number of other things that we're doing for youth to try and change their mindset in how to access opportunity. Because many of them still feel that the government is the person that should do a number of things. What we're trying to get them to understand is that in today's world, you can't just expect to go to school and then when you graduate you will get a job. There are those persons who built the country before. And what has to happen now is that they have to realize that that generation that built the country with jobs, etc., they're now the ones who are being expected to build the country and create jobs. So while we're turning and we're putting a number of things in place as a government through policy to create other industries which will in turn create jobs, we also have to instill in them a mindset that they have to be proactive as well and to realize that the country is depending on them for a number of things. So we're doing that through the ministry. Culturally, it was a policy set this year to open more museums and places of heritage and sites so that our people could be proud of who we are, could understand our history. I'm pleased to report that we've opened 3 new museums in Jamaica this year. We've opened the Civil Museum in St. Anne. I've opened the National People's Museum of Jamaica, which is downtown with the Rastafari exhibition. We've opened the Norman Manley Museum in Roxborough, and we're opening 6 other museums related to our national heroes. We're upgrading the Port Royal Museum, and this weekend over Heritage Week, those museums are going to be open free to the public, so that children can go, parents can go, and we're on a mission to protect our heritage and to protect our spaces. And so those are some of the most exciting things, apart from children, because I see people's faces when they go in and they actually see a space that could rival anywhere in the world. And even though they're small, they're intimate, they're pristine, and our children can learn. And we have to become a country that protects our culture. I see other countries around the world that spend so much time and effort on their heritage, and them not know about we. So for me, it's something that I believe in. I want to take this time to welcome my children's advisor, Mrs. Sadie Keating, who is here, and my CEO at the Child Development Agency, acting CEO, Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, from the Child Development Agency. And so we travel with a team from Jamaica, myself, Mrs. Joan Young-Davis, Mrs. Keating, and Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray. And we all were at the UN this week, and now we're with you tonight. So I'm going to stop speaking because this is really your evening. So if there is any questions, please feel free to ask them. Thank you so much for listening.
Good evening, Minister Hanna. Great work that you've been doing. I read about the report that you made to the UN yesterday, and I'm very happy to hear that you've been able to return some, is it 5,000 children?
About 1,200.
Under the LIFE program.
Over 50.
Right. My concern is, are those children being followed up to ensure that they're not being placed in precarious situations or dangerous situations when they return to families? Are they returned to extended families or completely different families?
In some cases, they're returned to their families, in some cases to extended families. And in this case, yes, we do follow up and make sure that they are okay through the CDA and also through the Office of the Children's Registry, and the police also make sure that the things are okay. And they are required, because sometimes they come home and the parents don't report that they're back. They are required to report that they're back.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation, and congratulations for the work you're doing in Jamaica. I'm just a bit concerned I understand, and I've listened to the news every day, 106.7 at work, and what I'm understanding, a lot of, because of the difficulties Jamaicans are surviving, mothers are using their children to prostitute to make money. I know the government cannot police everywhere in the island, but is there anything they can do to stem this? Because these are teenagers that are being robbed of education, and they're out there prostituting just to survive in Jamaica.
Taking on another activity, working with some of the sex workers, both male and female, in Jamaica, along with UNICEF and the National Family Planning Board. So you'll hear some more things about that. They can be charged under the law, however. If a mother is found putting her child out for prostitution, we've had incidences recently where the mothers are charged, and if you know that there is a mother or father doing this to a child, once you make the report, they can be charged for it under the law. So once we find out, and if a child is picked up for trafficking or for prostitution, and we are made aware, or the law is made aware, and then the matter is dealt with.
Thank you also, I'm echoing everybody else. Great presentation. Is there a way to get a copy of the presentation? I heard Sharon said she saw the report.
No, it was just a report in the Observer.
Oh, that,
Yeah,
oh,
it's on the, we can always have it
From the
sent to you, we
UN.
can send it to the CG.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
because I think folks need to, I mean, it was kind of rapid, I was trying to type quickly, but I think you said a lot in there that folks are not aware of, especially in light of that Observer, was it the Observer article last week? That, I mean, that article about the bus, somebody
Halfway
got
Tree?
the place in Halfway Tree.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, and what was going on there. And so I know someone posted it on their Facebook page, and when I saw it, it created just so much response.
I tend to be the person that is responsible for all things children in Jamaica. I was recently commenting based on what a teacher in St. Elizabeth said to me, that she said sometimes she tell her children, look here man, they're making too much noise, my Lisa Hanna get in trouble.
All right.
So it is, I think because we have taken on the issues of children so frontally, that it has everything no. Because I don't think before, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was the same kind of responses that the press and the same kinds of issues that people now know that are taking place within our children.
What has come out, we do a radio program, and so we get a lot of calls about this, and what has come out is that parents and teachers and caretakers are scared of the children. And that to me is a little unusual considering the report that you're giving us now. And what do you plan to do, or your ministry plan to do, to really arrest this situation? Because there is this perception out there then that the lunatics have taken over the asylum and that there are no adults in charge.
Well, I will never abdicate my responsibility as a minister in charge of the CDA and other attendant issues. But at the end of the day, we can legislate as much as possible, but we can't legislate morality and values.
Right.
It really comes down to proper parenting, and it comes down to vigilance, and it comes down, as your mother would say, proper home training, to know that if you're out, you should behave in a particular way. Because what is going to happen now is that the police are going to now be patrolling, the various investigators are going to be patrolling, and if your child is caught, especially because the law is this, once the child is under 16, if an 18-year-old boy is caught in a precarious position with that child, that young woman or that young man, they can be arrested. And so all of our young people need to be very, very clear about what our laws are, whether they can be charged for sexual grooming, they can be charged for a number of different things.
Thank you, Sharon. Jose?
Madam Minister, and as I always say, welcome to our home away from yard. You know, we oftentimes talk about culture in Jamaica. And I wonder if our culture has been clearly defined. Because I know majority of the population in Jamaica has the blood of Africa coursing through their veins. But I have yet to see the culture defined, where we can know as a people. I see everybody else's culture is highlighted in a lot of instances. But it's as if the word African is something that is most folks are afraid to highlight that aspect of our culture. So I don't know if you have a concept of what culture is about, what the Jamaican culture is all about, because I know wherever we go, the majority culture is what predominates, and I don't see that in Jamaica. But and the other thing is how successful have you been since you have become minister in influencing the young people by raising their self-esteem? I notice we have a big problem there with bleaching, right? It's something that is, I just can't understand what would get into an African person's head. I understand the psychological aspect of it, but I don't know if your ministry have spent any time trying to get to the minds of our young people and to show them, point out to them that this is a self-destructing type of behavior. And lastly, I would like to ask you, there's an incident that took place in Jamaica, and maybe you could give us your side of the story, about one of our most progressive musical performer by the name of Queen Ifrica. And word is that there was a situation where she voiced her concern about a certain human behavior that most of us deplore. And she was treated disrespectfully, her mic was cut off, and things like that. So I wanted to know if it's a case where we as Jamaicans, or as human beings who don't agree with certain behavior, if we are to be silenced and we can't voice our concern about this behavior if we don't like it. I'm talking about homosexuality. If we don't have the right anymore to voice our concern, it's only the folks who support that lifestyle can voice their opinion. So the incident that took place, maybe you could shed some light on what happened.
Thank you.
Queen Ifrica is someone that I admire. I like her. I listen to her music. And I think the last incident that you perhaps are referring to was the one at the Grand Gala. I personally heard one comment. I didn't hear, I think there were 2 comments that were allegedly made by the artist. And one was on asking about legalizing a particular thing, and the other one was, I understand about homosexuality. And we had issued a statement dealing with the one especially on homosexuality, and essentially just saying it was for family entertainment because it was being carried live. There were a number of other attendant issues. Certainly the mic, from the best of my knowledge, was not cut on Queen Ifrica. I think her time had expired. But I think we all have a responsibility as persons who are performing in front, especially children, to be responsible enough to discuss ideas and the like, being conscious that we have other persons who are there watching, and sometimes it is not our opinions that are the most important thing at that time. The other question as it relates to bleaching, that is something that has been taking place. It's not only the Africans that are now bleaching.
Concerned about them.
Actually, there are other cultures that do it. And I'm actually amazed at some of the more well-known cosmetic companies globally that make products now for other ethnicities that they use in their everyday life. What is happening in Jamaica is that they're taking it to another level. And these young women are doing some dangerous things to themselves. They are women and men. The nobody feels it's only the woman. They're mixing bleach, peroxide, hair relax, all kinds of things. And for them, apparently, it's a style. For them, apparently, it's something else. It's unfortunate that people are not comfortable with the way they look. But the only thing that I can say is that we have to encourage women to feel more comfortable in their skins and to understand that whatever color they are beautiful. And for the underground market that sells these things to be patrolled, and so they have to realize too that they're damaging themselves physically. Because if you strip down your epidermis so far that your blood vessels start to show, I mean the nurses are here, you're prone to all kinds of different things. The last thing as it relates to the culture, our museums that we recently opened, one dedicated to Rastafari, that's the first exhibition. We're also going to be doing one dedicated to slavery. The one in Seville is where all four cultures clash, the Africans, the Tainos, the Spanish, and the British. That one showcases the history of who we are. And then, of course, we're going to be upgrading our national heroes. So our African heritage, we are strongly advocating, and we recognize that the majority of who we are as Jamaicans are predominantly from African descent, so that doesn't go lost on the ministry.
Good evening, Minister Hanna. I wanted to personally thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. We know that you have a tight schedule and we really appreciate that. My name is Erin Lou Hain. I am a first-generation Jamaican American. Both of my parents hail from Kingston. And even though I was born and raised in America, from New York originally, I had always been extremely proud of my Jamaican heritage and felt very close to it. And one of my biggest goals has always been to do as much as I can to give back to the land of my parents' birth, and because Jamaica will always be a part of me. A couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of attending a town hall that was given by the Consul at General, and I asked what were some of the biggest challenges he felt in terms of Jamaica as a whole progressing forward. And he mentioned the way that the young men of Jamaica were becoming lost and falling through the cracks, especially in comparison to the Jamaican women. So to me, that's very indicative of how important the youth are to the progress of the country. And something that I always been extremely concerned about was being able, especially as a young person, to become more involved here from the States, because we are so very distant from the problem, because we can't always obviously be in Jamaica to see these things firsthand, to understand what we can do. And there are many youth, especially in this region, that are below voting age, that have a very strong desire to give back to Jamaica, but they might not reach the age of young professional yet, or they are young professionals and have become disillusioned with trying in various ways that are quite disorganized to do as much as they can for Jamaica as possible. So I like this because it's been a very educative experience for me in trying to learn in a very short space of time what's going on. But I always want to know what our role, especially here in the United States, and I especially speak on behalf of young people, what we can do in order to improve things in Jamaica, because we are so far away, but we have a very strong will and desire, and we would like to collaborate as best as possible. But we want to collaborate in a way that's based on education of the issue at hand and not just suppositions. So I would just like to know, in your opinion, what do you feel are some of the best ways that, especially us, as being stateside, can get involved in the progress, especially of Jamaica's youth?
We have now established a direct link in my ministry that you can call, that you can join, and we can lead you in the right direction. So if you want to get involved in anything, we can point you in that right direction. But typically, and I agree with you, it's not about lofty ideas sometimes, or just talking, or because Jamaicans do a lot over here for Jamaicans that are in Jamaica, whether it's collecting wheelchairs and things from the hospital. There's so much things that Jamaicans do here that make such a big impact. What we need, however, is better networking. We need better networking across the divide, because at the end of the day, it's important for our young people to understand how the rest of the world is productive, how we work, how they think. I overheard a lady saying today that she would love to apply for that job, but because she grew up in the States, they wouldn't understand how she thinks in Jamaica, because she operates differently, even though she still have her Jamaican accent and everything. And it's interesting to me that Jamaicans who leave Jamaica come up here and work differently, but when they come back, they kind of fall into the same, back into the same pattern. Jamaica needs to increase its level of productivity. And we're rolling out programs and plans, and I think one of the best ways that you can help is to now have that kind of collaboration. So if we're doing something, you can come down in the same way the doctors come down and perform services. You can come down as young people and have talks with our young people. Talk about what you have to do. Talk about your experiences. Show them how to get from point A to point B, and also show them how to access resources, how to access overseas grants, how to access monies for grant aid, how to access monies for community projects, and to show them how they can stay right in Jamaica and work overseas, because the technology now allows us to work anywhere in the world. So the concept of one now one, our information shows us that what young people are saying is a solution set. Well, our launch for Youth Month and what we're going in for the next 6 months and beyond is reset the thing. The courage to do things differently. Yeah, and we're resetting everything. We're resetting the way we do things, we're resetting the way we think, we're resetting the way our youth workers are working, and we're saying you have to now have the courage to do things differently. So I agree with you. And Joan is someone you can contact, and we can navigate you anywhere you need to be led in that direction. 577-7902.
Thank you.
876 area code.
Here is an organization that I started that assists individuals who have been deported to Jamaica. We have some talent coming back, and we want to make sure that we harness what is coming back. And we also work in the community where we are, in helping the young people. And we want to really also look at those who are preparing to come up, helping them, so that when they do migrate, they don't fall through the cracks. Anyhow, one of the things, I used to teach in Jamaica before I came here, became a social worker. And one of the things I can remember is the lack of resources, counselors, social workers. I used to wear all of the hats as a teacher there. And I'm wondering if there can be collaboration with your ministry and the Ministry of Education, so that we don't really, before they get to the, to the homes or to the institutions and things like that, because you've got a lot of our children who really need guidance, before they get to that point. So if there could be something with that regard. And the other thing I also wanted, to address, and I just had to mention it because my dear friend and elder brother Jose mentioned it. I really want to find out if, as a society, we are going to, continue with the victimization of our children who are not like the rest of us. I was really troubled about the death of this young man earlier this year. I can remember, give me 2 minutes. A young man who was my client, not the famous Leroy Malvo, but a young man who came from the same community of Fletcher's Land that I came from in Kingston, who was a wonderful dancer, great dancer. By the time he got to 12 years old, he was being teased for dancing. And so he went to Tivoli Gardens and picked up a gun. And he's now serving life in prison at the federal prison here. One of the things that we have to do is that we have got to not just embrace our athletes or male athletes, but we have also got to embrace our male, dancers and singers, and we have to be more tolerant. We have to be more tolerant. And in terms of the programs that you have, I hope we won't, or young people who may not be gender appropriate or whatever, will not feel left out.
No, I agree with you. We have to be more tolerant.
So Minister, when I came up before, I didn't speak on behalf of the thing that is my passion, which is our culture, our music. I'm co-founder of the Coalition to Preserve Reggae Music, a 9-year-old non-profit organization right here in New York. And a lot of the things that you're speaking on are things that we have been speaking about for the last 10 years. As a matter of fact, Joan Young Davis is quite aware of this, because she knows when we started and when we tried to get the word out to folks in Jamaica that the messaging that is in our music is going to be a serious problem for us as Jamaicans. Whether it's our tourism, or as Carmita says, in terms of people seeing us as a homophobic society. 10 years ago we were saying that, and we were labeled as lyrics police, and my partner is here, Carla Makete. I want to just say respect to Carla Makete, who came in, because the kind of work that we have been doing is advocacy work. We feel vindicated now when we see what you're doing and what you're saying, because it makes us realize that we didn't lose our minds when we started talking about it. The men in the room aren't familiar. My big concern though is, what are you doing? You said that there's a shift, you want to create a shift in the psyche. And you said earlier that, there's one thing you can do all the legislation you want, but people's morals and people's values, music plays an integral role in that, in our culture. And I think that a lot of the music that is being shoved out here, that's being put out, is very negative, whether it's to our young girls or even our young boys that Carmita speak of. We have a new world order right now. What is being done in terms, can we create some kind of system where we get our young people to understand that you don't have to be about daggering and joking and bleaching and all that. Can we provide some kind of work with Jaria and other organizations like that, or organizations and so many others, to help to raise the bar and lift the consciousness? It's really negative. Yeah. It's really, but Gavin said when I walked in here this evening, if Beanie Man was down here, this place would be calm. Yeah. But we have the Minister of Youth and Culture, and everybody just sit back and relax and say, Jamaican people in the come and tell us, this is real. Yeah. But so how do we change that psyche?
True. That's not going to change overnight.
No, we don't.
The issue is that we have some really conscious artists out there now too.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
you have Conscience, you have a number of artists who are out there. Queen Ifrica, you have Katana, you have a number of them that are out there. And I tend to not want to give credibility to those who are damaging the social mores through music. And people have a switch. What I think is important, and it's something that we're discussing across the Ministry of Transport and Works and my ministry, is to not have it being played on buses and public transportation at all, in public spaces. So that there has to be a rating. In the same way now a child can't go to the movies if it's A16. We have to now start doing that and policing perhaps or situations where there are expletives, etc., because it pervades different spaces. But we still have to go back to parenting, because in the same way, my 12-year-old son, I monitor what is being watched, what's being listened to. I fortunately have a good relationship with him, so I know what he's doing on Skype. I know these kinds of things. And as much as you try to give them their freedom to grow up, you still have to play a role in that. So even when he comes home with some of the most interesting things on his phone, on YouTube, and they're coming from Jamaican lyricists, and you have to say, boy, this one, let me explain what this one is saying to you. This is not something you really need to be listening to at this stage. But those of us who know better have to start a momentum to take charge and leading, and the community and the village has to start once again raising children. It's not so long ago it used to happen, you know. But somehow those of us who have the courage to look at another person's child and say, look, what you're doing is wrong. You should not be doing that. We have to start going back there, because if we're expecting, because unfortunately, bad news sells, nastiness sells, and anything that is deemed to push the ante or go against the grain are things that people want to hear. So to say to you that we are able to police it is difficult. What we're working on now is trying to really improve the consciousness of our young people, and that is why I go out so much and talk to our young people, because if they can also see other examples, and we're utilizing people like Brian Lumley for Youth Fund, and Kenya Linton George and Kamala Bennett. These are young people who are starting businesses, who are doing well, who are pursuing excellence. They have to see what other young people in Jamaica are doing as well.
I'm Claudette Powell, former president of the Jamaica Nurses Group of New York, and the current president, Doreen Denny's here with me. I'm also the health sector leader of the Jamaican Diaspora and the president of the Caribbean American Nurses Association, so you can hear that health is my passion. But I'm so glad I'm here, Minister, that, you know, hearing that you're the Minister of Youth and Culture, I thought about coming here and saying, what does that have to do with health? But then as you spoke, I realized that you have to interact with all the agencies. So maybe that might have kept us, as Sharon said earlier, why don't we have more persons here? Maybe some of them were just as ignorant as I thought. So anyway, I really learned a lot, and to know that it is very important that all of us play a part with this ministry, because as she said earlier, without the young people, we don't have a future. Now, I can also share an experience. I've been doing medical missions in Jamaica annually, and some of the problems that I have seen, I was just wondering if we could start early in the schools, the education. I discussed it with some persons in Jamaica, and it was felt that maybe we would have to get permission from your ministry and also the Ministry of Education, because it comes with underage, get parental approval to go in and actually do basic sex education at a young age, because as you know, the children are very sexually active at an age that the parents won't even think of, as young as age 9 or 10. So therefore, we have to start from the school. So I'm bringing this to you, so maybe if it's not being worked on already, you could start to think of, see what you can do about it.
My hands are full, but I know that the Minister of Education is working quite carefully and cautiously on ensuring that proper education about all levels of morality and things having to do through guidance counseling, because typically that is done for our guidance counseling officers, are dealt with. But realize, you know, Mrs. Powell, that every day it gets harder, because these instruments, and I have an iPhone, the smartphones, subliminally seduce children in the most sexual ways. Everything that's pervading through these instruments, the music videos, the innuendo, the shows on television, are all enticing. So they're learning about it from, they can speak. And if you type in the wrong letter on the internet, it can navigate you to somewhere that might make your hair stand up. So it's becoming more hard to deal with it. So it goes back to our people who are guiding our children. And how you now talk to your child about if someone touches you here or touches you there, you might have these feelings at 12, but here's how you have to act on it. No, you can't do this. No, you shouldn't do that. It has to really start from there.
Yes, thank you. Two other points. Mental health. I'm concerned about the mental health. The issue of bleaching, people just not liking their appearance. I've witnessed it at some of these medical missions. And I also find that more of us have to go to Jamaica and really talk with these young people and be their role model. Let them know, yes, I'm your role model, not the person that you can't get to, not the person, the sports figure that's on the television. For example, my brother also goes with me, he's a physician. And when we go to the rural area and stand in that classroom and say to those children, first of all, when I ask where am I from, they never thought I'm from Jamaica because we are doing something. And I say, my brother is a physician. Really, ma'am? They need to hear that. They need to be able to say, yes, my grandmother's house was down the street there in a rural area. And we came from this area. And we are someone. I think they need to, and you should see the attention. You know, so it's little things that like the young lady wanted to find out what can be done. Something basic. Even if you go with a medical mission and you're not a medical person, you can speak with someone. It does make a difference. And unfortunately, a lot of the groups that go to Jamaica don't go with people who look like us.
Oh boy.
All right? The group that I go with, I'm going to give you an example. Mainly Caucasians. And I'm telling you, it is, and I'm telling the Minister of Health this, it is very important that at least one of us be on that team. Oh, Trevor Nixon? Oh, yes. Exactly. And, you know, it's just amazing. And I'm going to tell you, as the Minister of Youth, Education, and Minister of Health, that you promote that. I've already put in my recommendation. We know we speak English, and when those groups go there, and they think they understand our people, and young people too, and they don't get the right treatment. Anyway, to close, there was another situation, and I want to comment, maybe your ministry, the Ministry of Health. Last year, I encountered a case of incest with a 12-year-old.
We have a lot of incest in Jamaica.
Yes.
And don't only believe
Not just Jamaica.
it's incest in...
Yes.
No, don't only believe it's incest in girls or it's incest in boys, but don't also believe that it's in poor families. We have a lot of incest in some families that you would never expect
So sad.
happening, and we get the reports about them.
Yes. So maybe you got the one that I wrote. I was at this particular mission, and there was a 12-year-old, had some symptoms, and she was seen by my brother. Usually after the patients are seen, I look at the slip to see what they're being treated for, and I was just taken back. I saw the type of medication. And again, why it was important for me to be a female and a Jamaican, I took her to a corner, and I said to her, tell me the truth. You have a boyfriend? Is there a man bothering you? No, who else could do that? Anyway, she left me speechless. I just had to huddle her, and I fought back the tears. Because in all my years as a nurse, I've never had to deal with that. And to see that I dealt with that in my island. So anyway, I did say to one of the consuls... You can come down and help me anytime you want. I will. And I wrote a report. I told the person who was there that if I were in the United States, my license, I would have to report it. But I'm happy to say that Jamaica does have a similar system. I wrote the report, it was sent in, and this year I got a report that she was removed from the home.
And I was in Jamaica for 2 months, and I saw firsthand the unemployment youth. And I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that? What is being done to help these youths get jobs and so forth? Because all I saw was scamming and selling marijuana and nothing else. So what is being done about that? And also for those who want to further their education and they can't do that because the government is not helping them with that, what is your thoughts on that?
Well, let's start out from first principles. The government has a number of programs, even through my ministry, to assist young people who are not employed. But you have to also remember that some of our young people are unemployable because many of them leave schools without having passed one examination. And so many of them have to now go back through training to be able to even pass English. Some of them don't have English or don't have math. So a lot of them turn to the quick fixes, the scamming, the selling marijuana, the hustling on the streets, because they don't have the discipline to have a structure, because many of them were raising themselves as well, because some of their mothers or fathers left and went away, and they had to raise themselves in other situations. So there are a host of situations when you see a young person on doing something else that you would otherwise, who is in school, think differently of. And we have a number of programs that we've implemented. We've partnered with a program called Youth, which is Youth Upliftment through Education, through Employment. And they deal with at-risk, mentoring young people, dealing with those young people who you, for instance, have seen. But when you target some of these young people and you see firsthand that they can't even do remedial English, and then you say to them, look, we're going to put you in a job. And when they say, well, how much is it paying? And you say, well, $7,000 a week. They say, no, man, that can't do nothing. We don't want to work for $7,000 a week, or for you get a stipend to pay for your lunch and your transportation while you get training. They're not interested. They don't have an appreciation for that. They want to be able, they see, they want it now. And they also expect that when you get your first job, you're supposed to be making like what you get at a supervisory level. There's no relativity and no sense of benchmarking what really happens in life. When you start, when you get promoted, when you work hard, these are concepts to some of our young people that are non-existent. They've never heard of it. The other issue, so we do have programs. The other one that I spoke about, our graduate work program. We also have a summer employment program. We also have entrepreneurship programs that are able to assist. But their expectations outweigh what we are able to deliver, because what we're delivering in the best way is something that we feel is in their best interest. The other one, as it relates to school, we spend a lot. I can even speak as an individual member of parliament. This year, we help children go back to school in terms of primary school, in terms of secondary school, in terms of university. We pay university tuitions. The Ministry of Social Security and Labour has programs to assist university students who want to go to university. There's also the Student Loan Bureau, but it's hard. Tertiary education is difficult. If you are in a country where you have to pay for education, you know that you're here in New York. It's not easy. Are you on a student loan? You have financial aid? You have financial aid. Once you decide that you're going to go to university, unless you are in a country where they pay for you, like a Trinidad, and I see now where Barbados is moving to do something different. University and tertiary education is an investment. Now, what we're trying to do is take a hard look at the student loan system in Jamaica to try and assist more students to be able to go to university. No one should be preventing from having their education because they can't afford it. So I know the Ministry of Education, and we're all looking at it as a government to kind of streamline a better approach to help more students to go to university.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, I'm a young mother. Not so young anymore. And I have to find a way, when I became Minister of Youth and Culture, to sleep at night. Because I would take home, apart from my own constituency, I would take home everything with me. And worse, I wake up at 3:30 every morning. So it was doubly hard. How we are going to fix each and every issue, I truly believe, because we can legislate, we can put down a number of legislative measures. Whether it is here in the United States, whether it is in Jamaica, but it does not prevent people from first understanding the responsibility of what it means to have a child and what it means to raise a child. When you speak about conflict resolution and dealing with children in conflict, one of the aspects coming out of the conference, and sometimes I wish the cameras weren't on because I could speak a little bit more freely about some issues, is this: our children in Jamaica are exposed to a lot of violence. Whether it is in the homes with domestic abuse, because a lot of what people don't understand internationally is that a lot of what is happening in terms of violence and killing is domestic issues. When you hear of some of the murders now in Jamaica, it's a man killing the wife because she went off with I'm actually appalled at how many of our men and women are now so ill-equipped to deal with emotional issues and relationship issues. Because a lot of what is happening is that. So they're exposed to violence that way. They're exposed to their mother dealing with another baby father for their brother, that they are cursing them because they remind them of the father, etc. So there are a number of ways. So when you talk about conflict resolution, when you see a child going out there, sometimes when I speak to the CDA and say, look, there's this child aimlessly, and I will speak to the child. Sometimes the child just wants to get out of the house. Right. They don't want to go back there. Right. When the child is sent out as well to sell the book or to do something like that, it is child labor under the law.
Well, some of them are not that young, you know, because I think the CG, you've seen one of them, right?
Yeah.
They're not that young, but the school that is sending them overseas.
Which school is
it's
that?
pimping them out.
Which
Well,
school?
listen, if they're tertiary students, and you need to talk to the school. If it is a school that is doing it, if it is another situation where the child is out because of a parental situation or they can't make ends meet at home, that's another situation. But if it's a school, the school has to deal with it. They have to find out why one of their university students, and if it is the case that they sent them overseas ill-equipped, if they're on an exchange program and they don't have the resources, because some of the students also come without the necessary resources and don't tell the school that they don't have it.
Right. Yes, that's true.
Right, they just want to come to New York. I heard Shelley Ann Fraser speak the other day, you know. She was speaking at our Reset the Thing workshop for youth workers. And she said when the time came for her, she got a full scholarship. And when the time came for her to take the decision to go overseas to school or not, she chose to stay in Jamaica. And her mother was very upset about it. And she said the reason why she chose to stay in Jamaica was this. Her friends who came overseas, they tell you that they get full scholarships, but some of the hidden things that they don't pay for, and the athletes have to be working in the cafeteria, 2-3 jobs, plus train, plus go to school. And she said no, she's staying straight in Jamaica. She can live at her mother's yard, and she can go to school. So sometimes our young people decide that they want to come to overseas because it's a better way of life. And they buck up on some hard times.
Unfortunately, I was a bit late and missed your presentation, but much of the questioning and answers have been very informative. And like Jose, I would like to have an opportunity at some point to speak with you, this time through a program that I do, Diaspora Dialogue. But one of the issues that I'm hearing recurring, it seems to me, has to do with the socialization of our children in Jamaica. And I would like to believe that in addition to family, the institutions of the church and the school are important mechanisms for the socialization of our children. And at a meeting similar to this, I heard your predecessor in talking about the Jamaica 50 celebrations mention that civics would be reintroduced in schools. And many of us were very shocked to hear that civics was indeed not a part of the school experience for children in Jamaica. My question is, what is the thinking, what is the reality now as far as civics in schools in Jamaica? And what is the thinking about it? What exactly is the civics curriculum, if it exists? And what's the thinking about civics in schools in Jamaica? Because it seems to be an important element that need to address many of the issues that I've heard raised here this evening. Thank you.
Civics is being reintroduced into schools. The curriculum has been developed, and I know Minister Thwaites. There's some other things I believe that will be added to it. In addition to civics, a Marcus Garvey curriculum was also being introduced because we felt it was important to have the teachings of Marcus Garvey and our own children when my son went to school in Atlanta, he learned more about Marcus Garvey than when he was in Jamaica. So it is something that we believe is important, and it is being reintroduced into our school system now.
I believe that there needs to be more awareness of what's happening within their own society, because I've been looking at certain young people in Jamaica doing great things, like an architect in the Portland area. And I believe that by bringing these people up into the forefront and going up to talk to people in Jamaica, to let them know that you could do great things as a young guy. And I believe these things will have more influence on them. Young doctors, young architects, and have time with the youth and show them, because these guys are doing a lot of great work. And oftentimes it's not showcased in the media. So they don't know what's happening. And I believe you guys will do a good job by opening these avenues to them. And also the music. Growing up in Africa, personally, we grew up on the conscious side of the music, and it really guided us growing up. And I would like your office to promote more. I know you can't tell them what to sing, but at least, because those music stay with us, some of us, and are still with us. And sometimes, unfortunately, I meet Jamaicans and say, I don't know, I never heard of this artist. And I get amazed that we in Africa know what the EU is doing. So I love Jamaica. Like I always say, it's like my adopted homeland. And that's why I almost get it. But thank you very much for hearing me, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yes, we're on a mission to really promote a sort of cultural revolution in the country. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. I wish I could wave a magic wand and a number of things happen. It's not going to happen overnight. All right?
We're going to take the final question from Pastor Lawrence.
Thank you. Minister, my question will collaborate also with the education department. In my days, there was cadets, which would help with the disciplinary system of the youth in the school system. Do they still have that? Is that still implemented? Is it still going on?
We do. We still have our cadets in our uniform groups, but the Minister of Education has actually employed someone to revamp the role of the uniform groups in the schools. And I'm working together with him because I also have an increased budget for uniform groups, because we believe that a lot of our young people need to get involved. But one of the things in meeting with our uniform groups the other day, one young person said to me that a lot of people don't want to get into the cadets and the scouts anymore. They do it when they're in primary school. But when they get into secondary school, it's not cool. It's not cool, and they have exams, and so it starts to peter out. I think the question that has to be asked is whether or not it should be mandated. And certainly, we believe in dialogue as a government, but it's a question that you should be having dialogue amongst yourselves with, so that we can hear more about your thoughts. In discussing it with a lot of my stakeholders, some of them feel, not all, that it becoming a part of a uniform group, whether it's Brownies, Scouts, Rangers, Girl Guides, cadets, should be mandated that you must be a part of these. But not everybody agrees with that. And so, but it's still around. I love the cadets. Love them.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me tell you frankly, I've been to a lot of functions, as you can imagine. And oftentimes you say, I have learned so much.
Yes.
But sometimes I'm really all that truthful, you know. Thank you so much for coming here to us and imparting.
Yes.
And what makes me even prouder is the fact that these things that I've always wondered how we would get around it, I hear you have them. As you said, reset the thing.
Yes.
Reset the thing. Ladies and gentlemen, my task here now is simply just to thank you all for coming. And in doing so, I'd like to thank the Bishop, Cecil Riley, for the provision of this subject. His wonderful daughter, as usual, Mrs. Elizabeth Riley, posing. Pastor Sherry Larris, thanks for those insightful and inspirational words. Onto my staff members, Mr. Castro for the organization and moderation. Ms. Palmer, as usual, when I miss her from the office, she's somewhere else running the show. And we have with us here too, Mr. Patrick Buddington and a number of other folks, Mr. Johnson, from IMC Media, who are streamlining this event, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. We have...
I could never do all of this by myself. And I had introduced earlier the team that was with me, but I really wanted to give them a round of applause because I have Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, who has been doing tremendous work at the Child Development Agency to make sure that our children's homes and places of safety run. We have a lot more work to do, but we're all pulling as one team. Mrs. Joan Young-Davis, who is here, who makes my life a lot easier by assisting us to navigate through a lot of government bureaucracy. Because if you hear the private sector has sometimes difficulty, sometimes being in the system, sometimes we have to navigate it too. And we have some good civil servants who assist us on a daily basis in getting things done. And Mrs. Keating, I think she went outside, but Mrs. Keating is a former permanent Secretary of Health. She was formerly in the Cabinet Office, and she's the co-author of the Keating Report, which I think some of you heard about back in the day, which was an audit of our children's home. So she came out of retirement to come and assist my ministry and say, look, we're all on this together. So there's some good Jamaicans out there. And I'm happy that if there are any men that would like to join my team, fine, but I seem to be surrounded by some very competent women.